Good job, Basil. Good job.
Yeah, right.
More than 10 years later, Thief 2014 has been looked at in a variety of ways. With all the different angles I've had the luxury to mull over in the intermittent decade, I think I have something of my own to contribute. After the rage bait around its release and after the nostalgia bait in its retrospective, let's actually look at Thief 2014. Really look. Stare. Until your eyes bleed and you piss yourself, until you question your very existence. The most common criticism of Thief the Fourth 2014, alternatively Thief 4, or simply Thief, is that Eidos Montreal didn't understand the source material they were adapting. This is wrong. It's a universal explanation. It's convenient. It allows one to chalk up every change one dislikes to incompetence on the developer's part, while framing both viewer and critic as smarter than Eidos in every regard. But Eidos Montreal made mankind divided, a game which stands shoulder to shoulder with games like Dishonored or Prey 2017. Both of which come from Arcane, a studio where many developers of the original Thief trilogy found refuge after the dissolution of Looking Glass and Ion Storm.
Positive moment at Looking Glass? Maybe like when Jake said, "I'm never playing Unreal Tournament with you again," because I'd shot him in the head too many times.
It is beyond me how one could reasonably view Eidos Montreal as a coalition of bumbling idiots with no understanding of Thief in that context. Still, I find it hard to blame anyone for a reaction like that. And even if I did, I would only be doing the same thing to them as they're doing to Eidos. I think it's a reasonable reaction, emotionally. Seeing the name of a beloved series get dragged through the mud naturally provokes a desire to simplify, to condense frustrations into a direct and understandable framework. Considering the great deal of ambiguity around its development as well, there's little else to center a critique around. And not to be centrist or anything, but the same goes for the opposite reaction. Framing the game as a hidden gem or misunderstood masterpiece sheds just as much nuance. It's not as simple as, it's a good game, just not a good Thief game. Thief 2014 is far from perfect, a stone's throw from good, but coasted up real snug to brink and right to hell retribution in the bargain bin. Of course, Thief 2014 as a Thief game shoulders the burden of living up to perfection. There were grand ambitions here. Its ideas were novel for the time owing to its heritage and the gap in the market for stealth games. In gaming history, it stands alone as the one flop effort of rebooting a stealth game in its time period.
This might be a really bad idea.
No. Dishonored was successful in reimagining an immersive sim through the lens of contemporary design philosophies, so it would see elaboration on its design philosophy in following years. Thief 2014 is the only example we'll ever get of a failure in that same context. It is an evolutionary dead end aesthetically, systematically, and culturally. Looking at the deluge of dangling plot threads, inconsistent game design, and the sheer jank of it all. Ooh, very nice. What? No. Garrett. It's clear it was prey to mismanagement on many levels. I have dug through web archives, Reddit threads, and ancient tomes to find what little information about its development is publicly available. So let's look at all of that and more to see why Thief 2014 is an odd duck. There's two of everything. There's two of the chair, there's two of the plate, there's two of the thing. Is there two of you? There's two of the... I came into 2014 pretty excited to love something, not because it's good, but because I wanted to. I always thought it looked really cool when I was small, and I liked the sound of a bunch. I was convinced I'd stick with it regardless, just to catch up on something I missed. Heal my inner child, if you will. And so I did. I liked this game, but I did not expect to be as enraptured by it as I was. Do we just have to look around? Oh, baby! More than I like it, I like to think about Thief 2014. But what can there be to think about in this game so crucially bereft of everything that made me love its predecessors? This absolutely heinous case of scorched earth mainstreaming and dumbing down. Surprisingly, it is not anger, even though I will never forgive Eidos Montreal for what they did to my boy. It is instead interesting as a historical artifact. So many cultural issues and industry changes were tugging at this poor little game, stretching it to the point of translucence. It represents a cultural tipping point for gaming. along with Dishonored and Deus Ex Human Revolution, also put out by Eidos Montreal, exemplified the practice of linearity-focused streamlining that ran its course prior to the standardization of open-world design. Between the late 90s and late 2010s, many games were ping-ponging between two sets of audience demands. Older PC gamers would reminisce on previous design philosophies. From immersive sims to cut-and-dry shooter games, condensed non-linearity was the style they missed. For immersive sims, that would run from Ultima Underworld all the way to at least Thief 2. Levels did not guide players with paths, but let them wind up at points of interaction on their own accord. In the shift to console-focused development, there was a reversal of this. Toolsets were simplified for their unpredictable effect on performance, and levels were more like a set of lanes that would close off at level transitions. The Black Sheep immersive sim sequels of the time, like Invisible War, Deadly Shadows, felt the brunt of the initial frustration around this reversal. The jump from famously open-ended maps to distinctly cramped levels produced an especially intense contrast when it came to immersive sims. In adapting for consoles, the issue of RAM limitations hung over every decision. This is the slowest fucking elevator in a video game ever. Wait, I think I was supposed to go the other direction. Wow. And out of all the performance hogs, the treasured movable boxes were some of the first victims. As this frustration gradually spread further into the mainstream, the modern military shooters became the focus of gamer ire. Battlefield 3, Call of Duty, or Medal of Honor Warfighter were derided for not respecting the player's intelligence. And with the advent of the 8th generation, publishers acknowledged this demand the only way they knew how. Make it big, with big money. And now we're all tired of worlds that are too open. The unwashed gamer masses clamor for linear games once again. Instead of reminiscing on non-linearity, the demand is now for more authored experiences. That nostalgic longing has produced retrospectives and reevaluations of 6th and 7th gen games, and by extension the second wave in between the 7th and 8th generation when Thief 4 was released, or Thief 2014, or it's simply Thief, or were we too harsh? Or are the linear games good actually, or are we now overly lenient? Inexplicably, there are now people who grew up on games like this, so frustration has largely been subsumed by nostalgia on many fronts, splitting opinion on games of the era into two general camps corresponding to age groups. I want to look at these black sheep as a midpoint between revival M-Sims and originals. We can also look at them through the goggles of nostalgia for those late PS360 linear games. Thief 2014 is one among the black sheep in that in-between. One of many games stuck in an unfavorable position, the transition from 7th to 8th generation consoles. They had to appease new graphical standards while constricted by the measly 512 megabytes of RAM of the 360 and PS3. But Thief was not just caught between the rock and a hard place of technical compromise, though. These limitations would, for a brief period, squish certain games into a corner. In the deluge of shifting design priorities, the window and complexity of mechanics was widening. Some stared directly into it and saw great fire roaring in the deep like the Balrog. That great beast was a burning question. Are games art? Is it illegal or not to compromise mechanics for presentation or story? Is a game something that can be carried by them? Are those aspects even worthy of taking center stage? While not the first of its kind by any means, 2012's Dear Esther established an extreme to compare the frustration around linearity against. Gamers got really confused, because now games had emotions instead of guns. Games are about walking and experiencing things, and they make you think and ask questions. But now this chasm, this window, was wide open. In between gameplay, story, art design, linearity, and freedom sat Thief 2014 with a fucking howitzer pointed at its head. Armed both with the awareness that its developers were making the best of a tricky situation and a more forgiving attitude towards similar products of the time, we can evaluate Thief both on its own merit and with a more developed vocabulary around where its simplified mechanics fit into a greater whole. At release, Thief 2014 was not afforded the grace of being examined through as holistic a lens. Most outlets and consumers were at odds over how a game should be assessed. Money per hour, was understood to be the objective measurement of quality, is something clearly taking precedent as seen in the frustration toward 5 to 10 hour campaigns like that of the Order 1886. There was a frustration with style over substance, dumbing down, and alleged pretentiousness. There was not the same range in pricing we enjoy today. We had no Game Pass. There were 3 channels on the television, and you had to walk 8 miles through the snow to the Steam sale every week. It was $60, and it should be objectively good, and preferably with as little women speaking in it as possible.
Am I back in the fucking kitchen?
Thief 2014, with its aesthetic focus, short runtimes, simple mechanics, and female secondary character, did not stand a chance. Despite it, like Dishonored, keeping the majority of its female NPCs relegated to brothels, it was still a pariah at the time. There is good reason to criticize Thief 2014, but there's also another extreme to be wary of. Reminiscing on the game with the rose-tinted games used to be good glasses eliminates as much nuance on the other end. Neither of these will be a problem for us, though, as this is more so an examination of Thief's place in the kaleidoscope of video game history. Being a looking glass nerd, though, I do still get to be a little mad at it as a treat. So let's start with what they did. It's my boy. Garrett is the thief guy. He is in 2014 a different guy, a master thief. A mythical goth ninja.
You'll swing from a noose in the morning, master thief.
I guess he's like famous.
The point where I had to try my hardest to not get mad at what they did, and to my boy, is whenever he talks, and when people talk to him. Why am I trying not to be mad? What is it they did? That's so reprehensible. At first, we had to ask who Garrett is. Well, who is Garrett? He was initially as much of an everyman as he could ask for given the setting. In Thief 1 and 2, he was for the most part a poor guy, and was trying to make rent as a secret war was playing out in the background of the city. He is in between all of this, a reluctant participant. On a story level, he winds up smack dab in the middle of these shadowy conflicts, acting from the shadows not as a Batman, but as a little rat man. We hide, powerless in the dark, waiting not to pounce, but to scurry by. The environments we scurry about reinforce the pressures around Garrett. The sights and sounds of each faction are ever present, both in mechanical inflection and as symbols of factional influence. Not to be dramatic or anything, but the story lives in each step. Its themes echo in every sound. The stone floors of the builders in Thief 1 make noise, marking areas of mechanical risk in sound design. Man-made structures oppose the natural aesthetic of the woodseas. The electrical lights of the mechanists introduced in Thief 2 can't be put out with water arrows like the builders' torches of yore, instead forcing the player to make the risky one for light switches. No longer is able to affect the environment from the shadows, dark makes Garrett safer, but not always more capable. Thief is built around a lighting and sound-based stealth system. The reverence held for it by the world's population is a universal truth. It is the goodest way a guy did stealth of a forever type. In 1998, Looking Glass Studios perfected stealth on the first go-around. The immersion, tension, and emotional investment this stealth system generated remains unparalleled, save from the sequel in 2000, which was basically more the first one but cooler. To this day, it remains seemingly irreplicable. Every one of its eventual offspring reached to also be good at stealth, but did not become. Why is this, you may ask? What makes Original Thief so special as to have the awareness of its quality be ingrained among our most primal instinctual assumptions? And why cannot a guy make as also be as good as the Thief, even if it is Dishonored? If we're going to understand Thief 2014, we gotta understand the heritage it is attempting to carry on. The reason Thief 1 through Deadly Shadows works so well is mechanical diegesis, which apparently does not mean robot dinosaur, but instead that the game mechanics are textually consistent with the logic of the game world. As a comparison, it is basically the same distinction made between original soundtracks and in-game music. We take for granted that the ambient music in a game isn't actually playing in the game's world.
Just ignore it, it's non-diegetic.
It is there to set the mood for the player, but the characters aren't actually supposed to be hearing the music. But if there was, say, a radio sat in the game environment playing a song, then that would be diegetic, as it's understood to be an actual thing the characters are hearing. Visually, the same would go for a heads-up display. We know the character isn't seeing a target reticle or an ammo counter at every waking moment of their lives, because that would be weird. However, in some games like Metroid or Halo, this is made diegetic with the explanation of the respective player characters having helmets that actually display this info, once again making it diegetic. Mechanical diegesis then would mean that the verbiage of a given player character is happening exactly as it appears in-world. This type of diegesis is the most commonly omitted, as it typically means limiting the player character's abilities to what would be realistic within the setting. We typically play as the hero in games, so we see the fact that we kill 1 gajillion things as non-diegetic. Player characters are also often humanoid, so we just don't think about where they're actually keeping that rocket launcher, because it would probably hurt to put it up there, Leon. So if you want to make a player have fun by giving them abilities that make them feel powerful, you typically make omissions when it comes to mechanical diegesis. But what if your goal is not to make the player feel powerful? The Thief games answer this question with an entirely unique set of mechanics, all of which are wholly integrated into the game world. That's why all these years later, they remain some of the most immersive and engaging games ever made. The logical consistency of mechanics is what sets Thief apart. Of course, that consistency means paring back a lot of the rest of the games so that they can be consistent. In 1998, these graphics were perfectly serviceable, but more importantly, less resource-intensive than those of today. The sights and sounds are decidedly crunchy. Nothing like Thief 2014 with its richly decorated environments and fancy schmancy audio formats. Yet that crunch, in service to the aforementioned consistency, does nothing to hinder the experience. As we'll get to in a bit, the crucial point of difference in the reboot is where it makes its sacrifices. Aesthetics are much more pageant at the cost of the potential for their surrounding elements to bolster them. The aesthetics of the original Thief games win out against the reboot because of the way they sacrifice fidelity for the sake of congruence with those surrounding elements. As I said, Shadow, while obviously crucial for retaining undetected, is ironically used to disempower Garrett in many cases. The light gem which displays Garrett's current visibility level has many more stages of visibility than the modern take in 2014, the middle stages of which are ambiguous. This makes for uncertainty as to whether a guard passing by will see you and mess you up because Garrett cannot fight or you manage to just slip by. The system for sound propagation is complemented by an array of different surfaces and materials that each generate different levels of sound, also impacted by how fast you move across them. Guards are carefully placed with varying stages of readiness and may or may not carry torches. Hundreds of combinations between these factors and more are introduced procedurally throughout the game, making the possibility space so gargantuan and continually growing that a full familiarity can never develop on the player's side in a single playthrough. This is all indebted to how stripped down aesthetics are, because their simplicity keeps all of these elements legible to the player. Yet as the player becomes immersed in those aesthetics through play, they become absolutely enchanting in a way that no increase in visual fidelity can compete with. The more aesthetic complexity you add, the more you have to compensate in other areas for it to be consistent. So before we move on, let's quickly gawk at some more of these aesthetics. Beyond the bounds of the city lights, trees enclose Garrett in moody but warm forests where the mystical thrives. Compressed bird chirps and trickling water oscillate in volume as you traipse over serene green grass unsullied by normal mapping or foliage items. Despite the electronic artificiality of the models and textures, you feel the occasional warm breeze and your feet gently imprinting on the grass. The lighting is explicit about its purpose in gameplay, but it doesn't grind against the aesthetic at all. Light from magical flowers guide gameplay in a singular, serene aesthetic of this late 90s graphics facsimile of a forest at night. I think it goes without saying, though, that I am somewhat partial to this aesthetic, not only for my own connections, but what it means for gameplay and Garrett's character as a product of them. In all these places, Garrett is small. His sassy confidence is not an air of superiority, but a subtle way to assert himself and his independence. He is a good thief, but that is not who he is. Stealth isn't his superpower. He doesn't go for the big bucks unless someone asks him. He just throws whatever offense might take in his back. And that's Garrett to me. Even though he gets caught up in increasingly elaborate and potentially world-ending schemes, he ultimately just wants to pay rent. How compelling a character is that on the surface, though? Writing a 3-act story, an engaging narrative about a man caught up in world-changing conspiracies calls for a conflicted, distinctly 2014 protagonist. In the original trilogy, he was relatively carefree and certain of himself despite his situation. He comes off as content being alone. In reimagining him as a supposedly deeper, conflicted edgelord goth ninja, that solitude was reinterpreted as something born out of a fear of intimacy, something frequently remarked on in exchanges between Garrett and our sidekick protege, Eren. Both the arc of the story and Garrett as a character falls more in line with traditional standards of writing. While I personally think his motivations were interesting enough as they were, I still believe any creator should put their own experiences into their work instead of trying to replicate someone else's approach. In the context of the Deus Ex reboot from the same studio, Eidos Montreal, it becomes apparent that the writers there are more at home with this style of writing. A developer on the original Thief, Randy Smith, in an interview with Rock Paper Shotgun, expressed his misgivings somehow saltier than my own. Quote, I was like, why don't you guys make your own character? If you really want to expand this franchise, show us a different person who's similar to Garrett in this world but has their own characteristics. Eidos Montreal will go on to do both and neither, keeping Garrett while replacing his voice actor, Steven Russell, with a sound-alike and completely uprooting who Garrett is as a character. Make no mistake, this came out of a concession to market conditions, but it was also a sacrifice made to keep aesthetics and characterization consistent. Steven Russell was seriously considered to reprise this role, even coming in to voice the protagonist at the start of production, after an exceptionally extended pre-production phase. Ultimately, a new actor was chosen, as Russell only had experience as voice acting and not in motion capture. To add consistency between the new mocap animations and voice performance, Romani Orsari ultimately landed the role owing to his experience in both. Again, different expectations on visual fidelity and the shift of console generation steered Eidos' choices. Randy would not play Thief 2014, partially saying what they did to our boy, but he did like Dishonored a lot. The original studio behind the Dark Project in the Middle Age, Looking Glass, was one with a unique culture and design philosophy completely incompatible with the modern game industry. It was also, like Ion Storm after it, completely incompatible with the not modern game industry, as they both went bankrupt as punishment for good deeds. The internal culture was, unlike many of its contemporaries like id Software, less focused on singling out creatives as the guy. Despite alumni like Harvey Smith, Ken Levine, or Warren Spector becoming reluctant rock star game devs, Randy Smith here reminisces specifically on the lack of ego within the studio. Their output would reflect these same ideas. Despite the situations their protagonists are written into, they are at least comparatively, distinctly clueless dudes. Eidos Montreal saw Garrett in a different light, with all the contrasts that produced. Those same contrasts can be seen even when they did create a new character in Adam Jensen. He never asked for this. Between J.C. Denton of the OG Deus Ex and Adam Jensen, a similar reimagining occurred. J.C. was, like Garrett, more goal-oriented than emotionally invested, one of gaming's most infinitely compelling lunkheads.
I'm not much into books.
Where Ion Storm and Looking Glass sought to create lovable, careless bags of bricks, Eidos expanded the internal worlds of their characters. Neither original Garrett or J.C. had much in the way of explicit emotional range. The characterization was instead largely done in exploring their relationship to game systems and how they, in turn, mingled with environmental storytelling. New Garrett and Adam Jensen were more so defined by their relationship to stupid women. They are very serious men, never beholden to slapstick or charming ignorance. Where comedy came from the gravity of the former two situations being entirely lost on them, the latter are much more direct in their reactions. Garrett is quippy, and Jensen's got some bite of his own. They each spend a lot more time around people. Eidos Montreal's style of character building is more reliant on telling where one can show, and by extension showing when one could play. So, as a fan of the previous games, most of Garrett's lines do more to remind me of how good old Garrett was than they do to make me feel for new Garrett or his respective plot device female. Still, with 16 years between the original and the reboot, is there much point in trying to write the exact same guy? Creativity is born out of the soul, in my opinion. New Garrett was written by a new person who put their own soul in their interpretations. Regardless of my own bias, I think it's infinitely more valuable that this Garrett came from someone's soul over a robotic attempt to recreate a 16-year-old character from someone else's. Of course, Randy is right that he would have been better suited as a completely new character, but brand recognition is a tempting thing. Independent of that, though, there's the reason I spoke about Garrett within this setting before getting to him as an emotional human being. I think even if it's in that positive to put a new spin on Garrett, you could do that while preserving the creativity in how his personality was developed. Through play. In the city. Right. Oh, this just looks good. Dang.
Hey, the city looks almost bearable from up here.
The world in 2014 is not its own thing. The city is built to match Garrett's outfit. Instead of letting the world cultivate an appropriate character, I think they started with the idea of cool ninja Garrett, then built a world to suit him. The city in 2014 is a pretty place. The art team took the impressionistic, somewhat primitive visual language of preceding entries and took it somewhere more painterly, not quite at the level of Dishonored's thematically appropriate, almost sickly watercolor aesthetic. Instead, 2014 lands closer to a stylized realism. The starry skybox quietly hangs over cramped, dingy streets. We swoop about the filthy shadows with a smoky vignette around our field of vision. Rotted wood juts out in layers of oppressive visual noise. I just appreciate a good bit of they used to do this back in the day where there's just rope on wood. What purpose does it serve? It looks like that. Thank you. 2014, despite its location in the timeline, draws most heavily from the original when it comes to what it chose to keep but reinterpret. Aspects of each age and faction remain, but their influence is not as heavy in the visuals of the world. The game takes place long after the other games, and as such, many old institutions have been demolished by the current ruler and main villain, the Baron of Northcrest. Under his rule, the city has taken on a much more uniform look, a mismanaged, destroyed, and plague-ridden Victorian-ish society. Post-Dark Project aesthetic additions like steampunk elements have been discarded in favor of a grand redecoration project of the original's cobblestone streets. Where the original trilogy was very particular and deliberate about the theming of its levels, 2014 sort of meshes it all together, trying to evoke the original through the lens of grim, dark gloom. Gloom is also the name of the game, not the literal game. A plague has taken hold in the city. Instead of banner-adorned castle walls or crunchy announcements from the mechanists ringing out in newly constructed spaces, rats and plague victims occupy filthy, long-forgotten, decrepit corners. Where the atmosphere was still and warm in the preceding game's sickness, and the stench of rotting fish hangs in the air of 2014, blown inland by an angry sea. This 2014 adapts the original's visual motifs but rearranges them through the lens of an inverted set of design principles. So what principles drove the world design of 2014? Theatrics over naturalism, a world and play space organized in strict accordance with Garrett's aesthetics and abilities. The range between obstacles is always consistent with the distance covered by Garrett's swoop, which has the knock-on effect of compressing the play space. A direct opposite of the OG trilogy's realistically scaled environments. Those environments were full of rooms that were realistically empty of gameplay features. A bank would have vacant offices with no guards or loot simply because it wouldn't make diegetic sense to have every room be filled with stuff that make numbers go up. It also had guards just hanging out and sleeping, eating, or making idle, cheesy chatter. These guards in these places did not exist to directly serve the gameplay experience, but to enhance it indirectly by immersion. Encounters were made significant because of the quiet time between them, because of the fact that the world dared to be plain. A sense of place was to the original trilogy as integral to the simulation as the system itself. While hotly debated to this day, the definition of an immersive sim has most commonly been attributed to quote-unquote emergent gameplay, a notion initially described by Island Storm's Warren Spector in his post-mortem on the original Deus Ex. It was the idea that mechanics can be combined in ways which generated unintended solutions to gameplay problems. I don't feel the same way. Most of the games agreed to be immersive sims, 0451 or not, have more dictated experiences than they let on. Taking Dishonored as an example, I don't think any approach to its verbiage falls outside of developer intent. There is much room for player expression, but I don't think any combination of its mechanics, barring things like speedrun glitches, goes beyond the intended use of them. The blank power is a direct parallel to the swoop, solving the same design problems and shaping level design in the same way. Light posts in Dishonored are as evenly spaced as boxes in Thief 2014. Eidos's Human Revolution had an over-reliance on vents. Even in Prey 2017, Arcane knowingly allowed climbing on blocks from the glue gun. If you start looking for it, if you start trying to peer at the sausage factory, these things are obvious, but in gameplay they feel natural. To me, this comes largely from the naturalistic design of environments. Though, I'll state up front that I think genre definition is pointless, and only results in a battle of increasingly deranged and no true Scotsman fallacies. What I'm trying to define is not genre, but my own preferences. Emergent gameplay by itself is not what gives me the sim vibe I'm looking for. What is shared between all of them, however, is that uniquely naturalistic approach to creating gameplay spaces. That's also why I find Thief 2014 to be so not Thief. It doesn't have that same set of priorities. Its space is designed for all action all the time. Serious, moody, Garrett action.
Let's see how you look as a porcupine.
The Monty Python skits and jovial whistles that previously balanced the tone around town is replaced by filthy talk from filthy, bloodthirsty guards of the Baron's Watch. Ham was the first thing to go, regrettably but understandably. The extended pre-production period meant rounds upon rounds of devastating focus testing. Dang fine coffee is a go-to example when defining the bias of focus groups. Comparing the things said by consumers taking part in focus testing with actual buying habits has shown that while participants would say they want a rich dark roast when asked, statistics show the majority of consumers actually buy a milkier, medium roast. The same applies within gaming. Focus groups expressly want darker, more mature stories, while buying habits display the opposite. This generally stems from the view of hammier aspects like those in the Thief series up to 2014 as less sophisticated. Speaking about Bioshock Infinite, Ken Levine, while having worked at the original studio of the Thief series, was open about appealing to focus groups, namely fat boys. The same is paralleled in Thief's reboot, discarding the prevalent Monty Python-esque guard chatter and crudely drawn cutscenes seen in previous entries in favor of glitzy, though often janky, cutscenes. Much appeal is lost in this transition, but some technical jank remained even through aggressive modernization. We find some charm in the less intentional comedy. You see, NPC chatter is no longer in scripted one-off instances, but occurs at set event triggers which you often cross repeatedly. Yes,
I need to sleep.
Something's different about you. Wait, I've got it. You don't stink of sweat and piss.
I just rolled with Polly Adler.
Leading to them triggering over and over, each as ridiculously loud as the last, because I feel like it's the game that had like extensive pre-production.
What are you doing out here?
Waiting for a storm.
This game has some of the most hilarious sound mixing I've ever had the pleasure of experiencing. Why was her fade to black? Am I in a different... What? Did you make that noise? In real life? Did you make that noise? Don't ever do that again. Sound design on the whole is fitting, but the stark shift makes me miss the comically compressed, the more competently mixed landscape in 1 through 3. The music is music, undeniably.
Hold the fort.
But has the same tendency to clumsily trigger and cut off due to the programming of guard awareness it's tied to.
Till the clock tower strikes to bring it here. Otherwise, find another mug to pawn your stones. No need to kick up a fog about it. I'll be on my way.
The city's aesthetics are admirably consistent. There is value in committing to a given vision. For that to work, though, you have to consistently commit to it. 1 and 2 especially found beauty in contrast. Tonal juxtaposition and aesthetic variety formed a greater whole. Over the course of 2014, though, aesthetics become a little one note, which isn't helped by its tendency to lampshade that one note. The city being built around Garrett takes a hit whenever he's character foiled.
Oh, good sir.
I love it.
Perhaps you can help me. Yes, I am the great Vittori, conductor of curiosities, the wrangler of wonder.
Characters like this feel out of place when the city doesn't balance as much as it flip-flops tonally as it's saying, yeah, we know it's a bit much. There's a silly guy for a change. Games have an ability to blend more sensitive subject matter with silliness if it's done with enough sincerity. With the catalyst of player expression as a through-line, games have a home field advantage when it comes to mixing tone. If a game succeeds in bringing the player into the narrative personally, they can accept the inconsistencies of it. In Thief, that relationship is very one-sided. Thief 2014 insists upon itself, telling the player what the tone is, instead of allowing them to play a part in establishing it within ludonarrative. Tonal juxtaposition in the new setting is inconsistent, coming off more as insecurity on the authorial side. Instead of presenting systems as is, they're reined in to preserve presentation of consistency even as it undercuts itself. The main example of those more dictated systems being stealth itself. Even with the more manageable space for patrol routes and hilariously low NPC count, the scripting for guards seem off. The light gem has been stripped down to basically 2 states, though environmental light is not visually communicated with an appropriate binary. You could previously tell at a glance how much risk was presented by the gradual shadows on the flatter, less cluttered surfaces of Europe. 2014's environment instead is incredibly noisy. There's so many spots where you might be fully in shadow, but the light indicator flickers randomly in response to little gaps in level geometry between buildings and certain boxes. The swoop power in Garrett Vision acts as a band-aid solution. It plays nicely with the idea of Garrett as this Batman type with Arkham Detective Vision or Curva's Dark Vision, yet that mechanical relationship favors the coolness of Garrett more than it does player immersion. Once you realize the set distance of the swoop, the set optimal stealth paths become intensely obvious, especially once you press the Detective Vision button. Here are some evenly spaced stacks of boxes around a single guard standing still with a torch leading to a big blue ladder or valve. Hold forward and press X 3 times so Garrett goes here now. The city is not just designed to match Garrett's outfit, but also neatly arranged to account for his Master Thief powers. This is okay, even if it's not like the other games. The point of the game is not to stop and stare while proclaiming, I know how game is made. This sausage comes from a factory. The relationship of tone and mechanics lies in the moment-to-moment stylization of gameplay. Thief 2014 is the best game of all time because you grab things and open drawers. The player's verbiage is visualized with exceptional finesse, even by modern standards. I will grab 1,000 items, I will watch 1,000 clamber animations, and I will be a very happy girl indeed. It is achingly simple and absolutely gorgeous, so I don't care. There is still room to make your own fun within the systems, despite how constricted they are. There's not much complexity in the mechanics themselves, but it takes 2 to tango. If you meet the game where it's at, you can dance along with the animations. Still, I'm not so concerned with dissecting the game to find the fun, as it were. It's nice to find some bright spots, but I don't want to make another Thief 2014 deserve better and twist myself into knots trying to prove it. There is value to looking at what works, if only to somehow understand where IDOS saw opportunities for compromises in order to resolve their 5-year stint in development hell. Thief 2014 reflects the priorities for a minimum viable product. It is IDOS Montreal's response to the question of how much Thief can we squeeze into this before our publisher starts chopping fingers off. The result is a game where anyone familiar with the series has to do some work to play along. Ultimately, you gotta play the game you're playing. It seems obvious, but to some it is a much more active effort than for others. It is its own metagame, if you will. In the absence of direct ludic challenge, we invent a self-imposed challenge. The stealth is a cakewalk. Not getting mad at how easy it is, that's the ultimate challenge for the in-sim sicko. But there's more difficulty modes. Difficulty in stealth games. Here is the crucial conflict of 2014's gameplay design. How do you manipulate difficulty in a stealth game? Why is it the way it is in the reboot? Well, the way it is this. Rogue, Thief, Master, and ImSim Sicko. Then there's all the default difficulty settings. The Thief offers custom settings as well as optional challenge missions with variable objectives. In the vast majority of today's games, difficulty is simple, but throughout the history of the medium, it has been a contentious topic on multiple levels. 2014 sits at a crossroad of design choices, as seen in each mode's respective approach to manipulating the level of challenge. If you can believe it, when it comes to preferences, people have preferences, but crucially, their own ideas about those preferences. The nebulous idea of an intended experience has been thrown to and fro in a long-running discussion as present in-game as it's been in community. Why is the spectrum of opinion on difficulty so wide? The easy answer is time. In the greater landscape, the default has drifted from an explicit set of options presented even before the first level to a single, universal setting where difficulty is ironically more player-driven in spite of explicit options being taken away. The industry is settled on this because it is in most cases the goodest. Still, the topic of difficulty remains complex in spite of the options themselves not being absent in most games. From indie to AAA, this remains the prevailing design philosophy. Let players dictate their own experience through mechanics. Everybody wins, right? It would seem so, but the truth is that difficulty comes with cultural and gendered associations. Ahead of that wider discussion, let's look at the famously unique relationship with difficulty. Stealth games, and the Thief games especially, have a careful balance to tread when it comes to difficulty design. The original Thief was an important progenitor to the player-driven form of difficulty design we're used to in the modern day. Instead of ratcheting difficulty up through narrowing the window of detection time or widening view cones, difficulty settings were based on optional level goals. In 2014, this was partially preserved in the optional missions, but in a way that fails to recognize why difficulty was arranged that way. The swoop power has a set distance which detection timings and object spacing is built to accommodate. Levels typically have one optimal ghost trap that taxes resources over player intuition. A rope arrow here, a 500 gold wrench tool there. The other route presents the risk of costing health items and level ratings. The two rarely intersect, revealing the overarching problem. You can't choke the detection timing past the window of the swoop without breaking the game, and players who want challenge are typically completionists who already have all the items needed. The game here is in a lose-lose situation due to its level design. Absent the immersive sim elements of the immersive sims it's replicating, player expression and its coinciding nuance is impossible. Rather than the sliding scale of difficulty its options imply, it's either broken or too easy because of its limited systems. So why have them? If you spent 5 years designing this system, you would be fully aware of its mechanical possibility space and the whole situation when it comes to difficulty. You know it can't work. What you also know is gamers are babies who want their ego validated. And that's why difficulty is a cultural issue. I brought out the inverse attitude its software had to Looking Glass. It made player characters that made players feel like rock stars, a natural product of the social environment within a boys' club. Difficulty was an expression of penis length. To some, it remains this way today in denial of the industry-wide reassessment of the approach to difficulty. Dark Souls' get good philosophy or other meager attempts to squeeze personal validation out of arbitrary game systems trace their lineage back to the arcade scoring systems and the competitive macho culture in gaming. Still, in this environment, perhaps at a time of even higher tempers owing to gamers operating at maximum misogyny at the time, a game with a badass anti-hero already towing the line by including a stupid female would probably face backlash for being a too easy game for fake gamers were it to openly embrace itself as the more accessible experience it was designed as. A shame really, seeing as the four predecessors already had this whole thing figured out. The less ego-driven culture within Looking Glass led to a view of difficulty as a motivator to use Garrett's toolset more creatively. The options in the earlier games were only tools to necessitate deeper engagement with systems. As the rest of the industry saw variable difficulty as increments of how tough are ya, the lack of ego within the studio led to a perception of difficulty as a way to adapt one's experience in accordance with ludic familiarity. It doesn't praise the player but gradually disempowers them. Garrett's thin purse made for more considered use of equipment. More loot to fetch, and more exposure to potential fail states means risk ramps up relative to time spent in the level. Staple tools like water or rope arrows carried over to the reboot, yet shorter levels and the burden of accommodating animation systems meant their use cases had to be much more authored. Water arrows fed into opening pre-designated routes, while rope arrows can't be freely placed. Instead, only usable at distinct points marked by bright white rope. Moss and vine arrows are now gone. Fire and explosive arrows have been repurposed as combat tools, and noisemaker arrows have been replaced with what else but a bottle. The shortened list of tools directly corresponds to the different take on the Thief experience. The approach to difficulty is a product of them. Like Garrett, it comes across as a reinterpretation based on a list of what's in the games and asking how do we do this in the modern day. It's the components of the originals as summarized in sentences. There is a thief. He has these tools. There is lighting-based stealth. There is a dark city setting, so on and so forth. Eidos Montreal objectively did their job in making a game that has all of these things. As separate components develop modularly to construct designated paths, they lose a compelling mechanical relationship to each other. Emergent gameplay is an answer to a single question of how will you complete this level. The reboot instead asks, did you buy the item this path requires? Then it asks again, and again, and again, until you reach a cutscene and a story beat. We have now also reached the story, so let us beat it senseless.
There's one thing this city's taught me. You can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputations, a life. And trust? If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
After a brief but illuminating dialogue, the game puts its best foot forward. The animation system is perhaps the most eye-catching aspect of 2014. As far as I know, it stood alone in its inclusion up until Red Dead Redemption 2 and arguably does it smoother, at least when it comes to item pickups. But like anything good in 2014, it's a monkey's paw, or in this case, a Garrett's hand. It calls attention to Garrett. He turns candles out like that because he's badass. He's not scared of fire. If he had bigger hands, he wouldn't even use water arrows. These animations are communications of aesthetic, not ludic ones. The plain sound effect that played on pickups in previous games was very much the system speaking directly to the player. A concise remark, you got thing. It excuses itself so as to not get between the player and the simulation. If a player is A and the game world is C, then the presentation of this interaction is a lowercase b in the minimum font size. It's also in that Egyptian font for some reason. It de-emphasizes B to immerse the player in the simulation, the ludic moment, whereas 2014 emphasizes B at the cost of the simulation. Like, look at how there's reverse kinematics on how he chases over the bugs. Look, and his thumb and everything. Oh. This is the best game. Though as I glaze the glitzy animations enough already, let's first talk about what this monologue tells us, because it's gonna lay the groundwork for how we interpret the wider story. The city of... and Garrett's place within it is immediately established in no uncertain words, especially as it relates to the trope Garrett represents in the inconsistent political attitude of the story. Over the first 3 chapters, we find our feet in 2014's grim derp setting, as was the style at the time. In its consistently dark mood, developed around Garrett's edgy aesthetics, as stated, the thematic tone leans toward misanthropy as a way to distance itself from the politics it depicts, recalling the apolitical approach of contemporary in-sim reboots. We'll get to this once we establish the conflict in later chapters, but for now let's focus on the relationship between Garrett and Erin. A simple job, gone wrong for a dumb reason. After Garrett's monologue, establishing him as a cynical Batman, we encounter our plot device. Say hello to Erin, our plucky sidekick and sort of daughter, sort of sister, soon-to-turn plot device, as is the favorite role of any female character in a 2010s game. We have a quick jaunt through the city at sundown, establishing their quippy relationship in relation to returning character Basso.
Basso did tell you we were working together on this, right?
Well, I showed up, so what do you think?
I think you haven't changed a bit. Come on, it'll be just like old times.
We're gonna meet him in a bit, but first let's talk hook thing.
You should get yourself one of these.
Displaying Garrett's shift in modus operandi from thief to master ninja thief, he frowns upon Erin's use of her homemade hook.
You're holding me back.
Relying on that claw's holding you back.
He has gone from a pragmatic, whatever works to scrounge up rent money attitude to some strange view of thieving as a refined art. This hook, infected by the touch of a woman, will become a plot device in turn as we head to the main villain, the Baron's estate, to steal a primal stone, which is our main MacGuffin. We get a wonderfully crunchy pre-rendered cutscene here, probably done by whoever did the one for Age of Empires. I want to eat this chess piece. Jokes aside, it is likely a remnant from the earlier stages of 2014's 5-year stint in development hell. They're doing a villainous ritual down there, and Garrett makes a solid call of maybe not stealing a crystal currently engaged in evil crystal business, because it would be rude.
It's too dangerous, and you're not ready yet.
You know, I'm not a kid anymore. I can do this. I'm going down there with or without you.
Aaron disagrees. Garrett decides to be a child about that.
Not without this, you're not.
Aaron follows her calling through a glass window into what we'll discover later is Dream Sequence Land.
Garrett, I'm slipping! Ah! Garrett, use me the claw!
And that's the end of the prologue. Garrett is back in business and doesn't give a shit about the hook because he has amnesia now. Really piling it on here, fellas. I initially thought the hook was going to tie into Garrett's characterization as the memento of Aaron, perfectly tying gameplay and narrative together like back in old times, but no such luck. He just sort of has it now. It's a fun mechanic on its own, but still, like most elements, it ties more into the coolness of Garrett more than anything. A coolness often lampshaded by Basil. And then, you know, back at the Batcave, we find a matchbox he sent to Garrett by Bert. We go visit our boy Basil, seeing the sights along the way, and he is funny.
I would have went for the pickle jar, Basso, a lot more weight.
Far be it for me to pry about where you've been for the last fucking year. Where the hell have you been?
I don't know.
And he tells us we've been gone saying a plot twist for the last year. You notice I remark an uncharacteristic amount on obvious storytelling devices, which I normally think is silly because they usually don't bother me, but this is a plot very reliant on them in a way I can't even ignore.
Especially with the Baron's new duty on opium, thanks to this gloom sickness, not to mention the Thief-Taker General's black tax.
It's part of the generational growing pains gaming was going through at the time. Stories at the time were trying to be cinematic, separating the player from the character instead of letting them speak themselves through gameplay. Attempts to humanize characters often fell into a scorched earth method of giving them more dialogue and more cutscenes. I especially remember Halo 4 from around the same time and a comment by Kiki Wolfkill at 343 saying Master Chief is human. He's not a machine, in a comical misunderstanding of the series' heritage, very similar to the interpretation of Garrett by Eidos Montreal. It's the lovable lunkhead being turned into a complex human, with thoughts and emotions told instead of more understated character development relayed through plays, so as to let the player take part in that characterization. Anyways, let's head out and meet the second best character of the game, the Resident Evil merchant.
I have something for all your nefarious needs.
Okay. Next up, blind woman who is gross because she's old. Her name is Granny Rags. No, her name is Mama Murphy. No, her name is the... It was her beggars who found you initially, but she doesn't really tell us much besides, so let's go about our broody little way to a slaughterhouse, which is really edgy, but it has climbing bits, and I really like them. As someone who's animated nothing apart from posing ragdolls in Gary's mod, I really have to commend the animation work here. As a fellow professional, we do another little source engine boogie here down the corpse hook line from Half-Life 2, only to wind up squeezed in the same room as this guy's gigantic bald spot. The Thief-Taker General is our first side villain, who we know is bad because he kills his own guy. But he also has the ring we need, which we snag easily enough before heading back to the clock tower with our chest where we keep all our supplies.
This is the chest where I keep all my supplies. Why leave?
Good to know, Garrett. I love my clock tower. All my things are in it.
Why me?
Oh, your jolly nature? Your engaging conversation? I don't know. It's the guy you stole the ring for. You must have impressed him.
Who is he?
He's Orion. One of the guys standing up against the Baron and sticking up for normal people like you and me. Well, me, anyway. He speaks a lot of sense. Fucking rarity in this place.
Garrett is so cool, and so good, and so cool that Orion, very important character, wants us back for our next job. Orion commands the Graven faction, opposing the oppressive forces of the Baron's Watch. Orion is politics because he helps the sick and poor.
The Baron favors progress over pain, metal and stone over flesh and blood. And look what has happened.
I don't get involved in politics.
Garrett is not politics.
Ah, yes.
Remember this for later.
Garrett? Garrett, I'm slipping! Ah!
This is your city, too?
What do you need from me?
I require a book. It's the only one of its kind still known to exist. I'm told it lies hidden somewhere in the House of Blossoms.
The House of Blossoms? I never went there, but I know someone who did. Aaron. There's an old mill in Riverside that Aaron used to call home.
You've never been here before, have you?
A quick jaunt through a stock standard dream sequence, courtesy of our resident plot device female who tells us she, the plucky irresponsible sidekick, looked up to Garrett.
I watched you. I wanted to be you. I want you to steal a key to the truth. It's from before I left home, before I became Aaron. But you have to find it yourself. Those are the rules.
It's almost as if Aaron wanted me to find something.
She also hints at her past as a constant victim. As you know, when a woman is a victim in a gritty setting, there is but one place to find her. Like Dishonored, it's Mission 3, you know what that means.
First time, sir.
Madame Xiao Xiao's House of Blossoms is our new golden cat, but it manages to be worse somehow. Being by peeping Tom on women forced into prostitution by poverty, which is so funny, guys.
Pinch my nipples a bit, would you?
And also, Aaron was forced into the sex trade, because that's women. That's what we do, girls. We look up to men, die, get rescued by men, and also sent to mental asylum, because we... Anyways, you can watch my Dishonored video if you want something more in-depth, but for now, we got a MacGuffin to get. And look who it is. Baldy. We narrowly escape and head back to Orion to hand him his tome and hear a little speech. Orion explains the book we took is the key to saving the city, but he also reveals our dear Basso has been kidnapped off-screen and taken by the Thief-Taker General to the Baron's Keep, our next goal. Garrett, in a brief lapse of edginess, initially withholds the book in exchange for information on how to reach Basso. Orion conveniently has a guy who's been studying the keep, but inconveniently, he's dead. But conveniently again, the place he was supposed to be in, barring this unfortunate case of dead, is located right next to the architect of the keep. The architect was already set up in the previous mission, so I'm a little confused as to why Eidos felt they needed to introduce this random guy only to kill him off 1 minute later, but whatever. Let's find the guy with the biggest tower in all the city.
It's a striking shape.
More. Give it to me.
And it's the biggest in the city?
Without a doubt. One more.
Thief is kind of weird about dicks and masculinity in general. There's a lot of gender-related story details, like the main villains competing with Garrett about tower size. The longer out of the 2 paragraphs on Madame Xiao Xiao's wiki page is about her having a penis. The Thief-Taker General is balding, and so on, but none of it really goes anywhere. The only sort of compassionate male character is Orion, and well, we'll see where that winds up soon enough. But for now, let's see about that archetype. Oh, for fuck's sake. We complete a, once again, tower-related puzzle, procuring the plans for the tower, and engage in a pretty fun chase sequence, all things considered.
Yeah.
It's one of those moments where Thief the 4th 2014's previously Thief 4 gets to be what it wants to be. It's a game constantly at odds with itself. Created in a transitional period, I think it would have been better suited as a wholehearted transition point for the franchise. Sitting in that generational gap, it could have kind of been its own Resident Evil 4, but in that comparison, it's more like it's jumping between Resident Evil 6 and 3 instead. Going back to the issue of difficulty, it also skips past that famously adaptive approach seen in both Resident Evil and earlier Thief entries. What it does share with RE4 is a shady merchant who has conveniently manifested in another random dark street corner right at the end of our chase sequence. Thank you! We support small business and shift back to a bit of quiet sneaking before unshifting back to a big explosion at the Baron's Keep.
Wait, are we at the tower? No. We can't be at the tower. We gotta go to this. Oh, what?
Orion's Graven followers have escalated the conflict to a proverbial storming of the Bastille, the awkward political parallels of which we'll get into the context of an upcoming story twist, but for now, let's get little Basso out of his cage so we can experience another display of Garrett's inconsistent philosophy.
Oh, we found Basso already.
With Basso out of the way, Garrett squarely contradicts the opening in his earlier remarks to Aaron about greed. The inciting event for the story is based on a conflict between Aaron's brash ambition and Garrett's principled pragmatism. Blatantly backpedaling, Garrett now goes for the vault in the keep, saying it's who he is.
Oh, wait. You're not thinking about those tall tales about the legendary Great Safe, are you? Look, Garrett. No one is paying you to risk your neck for this. It's not about the payment. It's who I am.
That is the opposite of a...
So what is that? Does he care about conflict or is he indifferent? It's really whatever the story calls for. So I like rocks. Let's do a rock.
And then...
Oh, there's a setup. No. The thief taker uses his big brain to fool Garrett because he knows him better than Garrett, despite only directly interacting for him with about 15 seconds. But cool, rock time. Because you see, this is not just any rock. It is a special dream sequence exposition rock. Aaron lays bare the nature of the relationship, framing it as a big brother, little sister dynamic where, again, it's unclear where Garrett stands.
Is that why you let me go, Garrett? Because I was the only family you had?
They impose this sort of fear of intimacy on his character, which is hard to buy not only as someone familiar with Garrett, but also within the current context of the story. He wants nothing but to save this poor woman. His only consistent motivation is fighting for those closest to him. He even mourns more than Basil about his little bird.
I even wished I had Genevieve with me.
Did he know that look meant his bird is dead?
That scum-sucking bastard. I always thought if anyone was gonna kill her, it'd be me.
Anyway, she tells him to go to an asylum for women suffering from plot device-itis, so we go for a ride on the world's suckiest elevator.
Hey, who's that? Whee!
That didn't quite go according to plan.
Rightfully a little shaken from recent events, Garrett heads back home to his goth lair for a quick brood. Refreshed, with a strengthened resolve and presumably 205 broken bones, save for the one that contains funny, we go on a merry jaunt down to the bar, where Basso is. He got a boat, and Garrett's got a classic Garrett line.
Now I remember why I don't like boats.
That's vintage Garrett. His character may shift throughout the narrative, but his unrequited hatred for boats remains. Jack and Daxter arrive on Misty Island. Booker DeWitt arrives. Garrett and Basso.
This feels, something. It's like a diorama.
This dock is the best one. Toward the end of a generation, consoles really start stretching their wings. Before volumetric fog came into volumetric, these layered texture sheets were commonplace. It reminds me a little bit of theater backdrops. They graze the scaffolding of suspended disbelief. Right here on this dock, they compress the space. Combined with the audio mixing, it feels especially curated, much like a stage. It's like you're indoors somehow. Up the stairs, we reach the similarly uncanny front gate and courtyard. There's a charm to the simplicity of this game. Oh no, the gate is locked. Whatever will I do? Playing Thief 2014, you don't have to use the dodge button much in-game, but beyond the screen, you're always dodging the author's hand, repeatedly trying to poke you in the eyeball. That's why Garrett has a mechanical one. He's quick, but he's not that quick. Welcome to Shalebridge Moira Asylum. This institution was one of many established to treat wandering womb syndrome, more commonly known as hysteria, derived from the ancient Greek word for womb. Back in the day, it was assumed that when a woman was being annoying, it was the result of her womb having been dislodged, freely traveling about her body. You could not punch the woman until she became normal, as the errant womb would simply scoot about like a game of whack-a-mole. Therefore, you had to put him in places like Moria Asylum here, where this and many more ailments could be treated through various methods. Erin, suffering not from Assyria, but from magical rock and plot device, was submitted by the Baron himself in a noble attempt to treat her condition. It turns out it was none other than he who erected this state-of-the-art facility complete with automated wheelchair scare and ghosty dudes. It turns out the ritual at the start of the game was an effort to summon the Primal, who, due to the thing not going so good, is now in Erin, or is Erin, or it's something, who consequently is turning all the dudes here into ghosty dudes we expertly evade and make our way home for a quick snooze before we start chasing our final lead at the very besieged Baron's mansion from the start of the game.
Maybe I am going crazy. Only one way to find out. The Baron. Back to North Christmas.
It's like Dishonored. I wonder if the guy we've been helping dismantle the current regime turns out to be manipulating us to...
I need answers. And you better give them to me.
Nobody likes my answers.
The hero of the people, Orion, who we've been helping, turns out to be the Baron's brother. Orion being a fake name because it's actually called Aldous. This narrative flip presents some thematic issues, once common at the time when games were starting to be seen as art that could say something. Developers approached this with a level of caution so as to not rile up the masses, which led to some problems. Eidos's preceding Deus Ex Human Revolution had its racism cake and face-planted into it for the sake of distancing itself from leftist ideas. Looking Glass alumni Ken Levine's nuanced opinion on Ayn Rand or Leni Riefenstahl's work would color his own work on BioShock and other games after the fact. Like Thief 2014 itself, they're shared both sides are bad and statements land each in a position with no viable avenue of messaging apart from humanity is garbage and there's no way forward for society. Purity First, the Vox Populi, and Thief's Own Graven, respectively, all turn into bloodthirsty maniacs in a single chapter, echoing the McCarthyist propaganda which painted any ideology apart from conservatism in the same light. Revolutionary leaders are always putting up a front of compassion while secretly manipulating the stupid working class for their nefarious ends. Through this lens, it accidentally implies any revolution will inevitably turn to indiscriminate violence.
Seems the Graven mob has had enough and is out to kill anyone who isn't one of them.
Ultimately resulting in something even more oppressive than the ruling ideology. So I guess things just suck and nothing will change ever. Which is not true, by the way. Humans are naturally compassionate creatures, and that compassion is what allowed us to go from cave people to gamers, for better or worse. The text of Thief, in its misanthropic edginess, would lead one to believe the opposite. Though not intentionally. As vehement as I am about ideology, it's not actually a dig at Eidos, because they were, like most mainstream studios, trying their best to not say anything. Though in dealing with politics and art, silence is often compliance. Introducing revolutionary politics also means reflecting one's own view of them. In this case, they are portrayed as something worse than the already lame situation in the city under the Baron's rule.
Baron's vision of order and efficiency. If he truly understood this city, he'd know it would never survive here.
Yeah. This is like 1984, man.
But the way the situation in the city develops is a plot contrivance born out of the want for a gritty setting. The reason 2014 takes such a violent heel turn here is motivated by a need to manufacture an additional layer of conflict for Garrett. Due to its many development restarts, the game suffers from being 3 plots squashed into one game. The resolutions of each never came. As we shall see, because we are almost at the end, just a little bit longer, guys. Okay. Before the last bit, let's get a quick overview, and I want you to remember that everything from Garrett being randomly activated like the Doom guy to now happened in like 6 days. Number 1, rock rundown. Baron told us that Garrett got 1 rock piece in his eye somehow. We steal 1 in the basement on our way out of Norcrest, and the last one is with Orion, who's gone crazy, and he has Erin in the fridge. The nature of Erin's actual state sort of fluctuates along with the definition of what the primal actually is. It's named as if it's like a creature of some kind, but it's also the stone? Or Erin has become the primal, or the primal is some sort of purgatory?
The balance of the primal was gone. It was talking to you, but you didn't listen.
You mean Erin?
Towards the end, it settles on the idea of it as some kind of Final Fantasy-style lifeblood of the earth. Since Erin is trapped in the primal, she's been influencing it with her pent-up anger over the last year when Garrett's been preoccupied with his job of amnesia. It's all kinds of confusing, and it doesn't go anywhere, so for now we say goodbye forever Baron, goodbye forever Granny Rags, and set out to save Erin. She's in a secret compound set up by Ryan, who, since the last time we saw him, has gone completely insane, along with every one of his followers. Entering the compound marks the final leg of the game, comprised of Chapter 7, The Hidden City, and Chapter 8, The Dawn's Light. The Hidden City, most importantly, encompasses our final encounter with the merchant and his funniest location yet. Did you really have to make two of them? Oh.
Have a look.
How did he get in? How did he even get in here? He's like a human version of the Dark Souls 2 card. He is important though, because we need supplies if we're gonna make it past the Thief-Taker General, who once again randomly appears after Ryan narrowly escapes with Aaron as we interrupt his ritual and get a little exposition.
Garrett! What have you done? I need that. We need that! Don't you understand what I'm trying to do here?
You need to stop her.
So, okay. I mostly try to steer clear of words like good or bad, but like, this boss fight sucks so fucking bad. Your goal in this boss fight is to turn off 2 valves and pick a lock while remaining in darkness as this Thief-Taker General feller walks around the center of this small circular room and shoots explosive arrows in random directions. He never leaves the light section in the middle. These arrows light up torches placed in a circular pattern around the room. If you want to stay in darkness to turn the valve, you will have to turn each torch back off once he lights it using water arrows that you may or may not have. If you do not have enough water arrows and his RNG leads him to light too many torches, you can no longer complete the objective. If you do get to a valve, then he will detect that you are there and shoot an arrow at your location as soon as he finishes his current cycle. If he gets you, it is a one-shot kill. If he misses you, but you're still in the same pie slice of the arena he's shooting into, you take less damage, but still catch the fire effect, also leading to a one-hit kill. If you are behind the designated cover, like the pillars or boxes, his arrows will hit you anyway. If you forego sneaking and engage him directly by sneaking up behind him, he will turn around immediately. If you manage to make it to him in that incredibly small zone where the actual prompt to do the animation for stunning him triggers. If you stun him, you have to use focus mode, which up to this point has only been used to highlight environmental features like points where you can shoot rope arrows or activate hidden buttons. So if you forego attacking him when he's stunned and instead turn on focus mode, as one does, you can then hit his weak point, which is his leg. The ability to use focus mode is limited by a bar, only able to be filled up with a consumable, which is not present in the arena. An arena that you cannot leave once the fight is started. All in all, I'm split on whether I like this boss fight. It may be good, yeah, and it could also be not good. Who is to say? You think they would have used this setup efficiently because it's just all logic out the window like something from a 2000s platformer? There's no need to compromise for believability, but even with how dramatic it is, nothing works. With that out of the way, we can shoot our way to Orion's giant ship that he built to escape the city, which, mind you, he has spent the entire game trying to take over by any means necessary. And this is what I mean by the game just being a bunch of plots mushed into one indecipherable mess, which I'll admit is endearing in a janky sort of way. As for actually being invested in that plot, it is a crapshoot. At some point, you start to just expect that the plot will flip completely off-screen between every mission. The game becomes a continuous stream of moments when you just go, alright, I guess we're doing this now. Cool. The last this we're doing now being finally confronting Orion and saving Aaron. We whack these, I assume, sailors. We never really see the whole boat from the outside or any sections reminiscent of the boat until... You think the ending is through this door? Ryan gets Temple of Doom, and Garrett switches personalities.
You won't save people from the gloom, Orion. You'll just turn them into monsters!
And Aaron switches personalities once again because now Garrett has killed Aaron and betrayed her in a different plotline that didn't happen, so we need a boss fight. I must ask, dear audience, that you make sure you are emotionally prepared for what is to come here. The ending sequence is the culmination of what Thief 4 offers as an experience. If you bottle this last hour, which I've charitably condensed in order to spare you from the amount of brain damage I suffered during this finale, you could melt steel with that liquid. We got indecipherable narrative, unexplained mechanics, trial and error gameplay, the most mystical fail-state conditions I've ever witnessed, and design choices I can only assume were relayed to Eidos Montreal in a dream from some eldritch abomination in the Beyond realm. It is one of the greatest gaming experiences I have ever had. I will not explain this boss fight, because I cannot explain this boss fight. I can only show you and pray for your sanity. Alright, well, at least I know. Alright, you can't. My sanity's slipping.
Stop hiding.
I was uncovered, but whatever. Okay, I finally got it. Here we go. Thank you. I didn't either, girl. Now, after this, you are locked into a walking animation. You cannot mantle. You cannot jump down from anything. For a brief moment, my soul was entirely divorced from my body. Dude, please. You're not. No, don't let me be stuck here. I can't swoop. Until I realized that, oh, I actually just have to walk. But I walked very carefully. Yep. So if I fall here, I'll die. Alright, let's do the ending.
I've had enough.
That's right.
Just get the job done.
Nice to see you for the second. Oh. Erin quite literally changes her mind and the boat explodes off-screen, so we get a cliffhanger calling back to the famous line, Garrett, I'm slipping. Garrett wants the book now for some reason, even though he said he doesn't care about it, so Erin slips and dies. Or does she? I'm asking that because the game doesn't actually do anything to instill any doubt as to whether she survived, so if that's the ending, that's the funniest thing ever. Dang it. Well, is it? I like this song. Is it? Is it? Everything about this game still kind of sucks ass, and I don't like it, but I appreciate it for what it represents. Thief 2014 dismantles the ideas of its series and reconstructs them into something generic. Generic is important. Crafting something generic means condensing the prominent trends of a fleeting moment into a snapshot of that moment. The sea of mediocrity is the context by which we understand the islands of exceptional work. I knew this game was fuck. I wanted to like it anyways, but like I said, I came out enthralled for all the wrong reasons. But maybe they aren't so wrong. Maybe the purpose of this game is simply to be worth remembering because of what it tells us on a meta level. Every time I booted up Thief, I got a big notification the Square Enix game services were not operational. And with each time I clicked past that, I thought, what if I couldn't play this game anymore because of that? 2014 Ori would never have gotten her vindication. I only got into the earlier Thief games because I heard about how shit this one was. Because when people shit-talked it, they did so by remarking on the things that made the original special. I would never have heard about and became interested in the originals if it weren't for those comparisons. So Thief 2014 shouldn't be discarded due to its mediocrity, because without it, we wouldn't understand what was so special about the series. We wouldn't have a measuring stick to define what was so special about the series going forward. History is not a highlight reel. Game preservation is not only about keeping good games playable for enjoyment, it's as important to preserve their context. The most unique games are made memorable by how they buck trends. Mediocre games are where those trends are displayed most clearly. Everything that fucking sucks donkey dick has its purpose, even though we might not know it or feel it right then and there. And just like the plot of Thief 2014, we forget about most things because every day there's a new random ass plot thread and we gotta go, oh, I guess we're doing this now. And sometimes we look back at relics like 2014 and kind of miss them, even though we know factually that they sucked donkey dick. That's also what makes us happy for how far we came since then. No, I don't look back at Thief with any wistful nostalgia like that. And I think how abruptly it ends is funny because of the fact that, thank you so much for watching. If you stuck around to the end and want to watch more stuff like this, you should subscribe. And also like the video and maybe even leave your own opinion in the form of a YouTube comment. I'm sure you'll have the first good one. I hope you have a good rest of your day and life for that matter. It's a crazy, crazy world out there, but I'm proud of you for sticking around. And that's enough. Whether life is bumpy or smooth, remember to take care of yourself. Magic is real, and I have been oatmeal.